are live right now on YouTube, on Facebook, please give me a big smile because, as you know, with LinkedIn, once we have the first slide, we can't change that ever. I will keep mentioning this till LinkedIn allows us to change the thumbnail.
Yes.
I'm lobbying for this because I really think it is really, really improper that in 2026 we still do not have the capacity to change the thumbnail. Like, just imagine somebody who by accident were sneezing, and when you started actually the podcast, they were like, and then you keep them like this forever.
Yeah.
So now we are live everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, hello, welcome. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you for the beautiful Berber for always being on our side. Thank you very much, Dr. Melissa, for being here. So those who are loyal of you would remember that we've already had actually Dr. Melissa once. But this is very much like when you had an amazing ice cream in the very hot weather, or like an amazing performance of an artist. When they finish, what do you say? Encore, encore. So this is exactly what happened. And we asked Melissa to come again, encore. So here she is, very generous, very kind with her beautiful smile. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back. So, as an art, if I'm the artist, then I'm excited to be back with the audience. So thank you so much. Sincerely, I appreciate it.
Thank you. And as Berber wasn't here actually last time, so today we will give her more room to ask her questions or eventually to make her comments, which is frankly great because this will give me a little bit of some resting time and I can drink more of my coffee.
No rest for you, Mark. No rest for you.
Great. Who would like to start? Maybe Berber would like to catch up with a couple of words actually on why you missed last time. You remember?
To be honest, I don't remember. I had some appointment. Do you
I think we
remember?
had a very big workshop, yes, in Germany. A very high-ranking one with
Yes.
very big impact.
Well, yeah, you're right. One of the leadership programs I love so much. I have the great chance to do this regularly several times a year, and I really love it. It goes over 1.5 years. It's indeed hiring leaders from different countries, 6 modules, and it's always a great journey. So you get to know these people really well over time, get inspired. So it's a great exchange, and I'm very happy to be able to run those programs.
That's great. That's amazing. Okay, Melissa, I'll continue where we stopped last time. If you remember, we were talking actually about your consultancy, about things that you see in your work, and about actually the outcome of that. And the last question that I had on mind, I wanted to ask but couldn't ask. I wanted to ask you, what is the difference between feeling sorry for your team and actually leading them through a crisis?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, actually, because that's the difference really between sympathy and empathy. And they are 2 different things. We tend to put them all together. So sympathy is closer to pity. And, when you do that, you're looking at another person's situation through your own eyes, which means you're bringing all of your baggage with you. And that's how you usually end up with, oh my God, I'm so glad that wasn't me. Or, gee, I feel sorry for you. There's an element of judgment there because you're comparing your experience to theirs. You're not really trying to understand their experience through their eyes. Whereas with empathy, you're trying to understand the experience through their eyes. You're taking their perspective. It's really understanding how it is to be in their head, and that's different. So just feeling sorry for your team isn't going to do it because that is pity and it is taken negatively. I'm finishing up my dissertation now, and that's one of the things that, because I talk to healthcare leadership, and they talk about, yeah, right? and that's one of the things that they did talk about, that if you approach people with this pity and this judgment, especially if you're dealing with patients that maybe have the worst day of their life, it's going to be taken negatively, and it's going to be taken negatively by your team as well. That's why it's so important to approach with empathy and understand their perspective, as opposed to imposing your perspective on them.
Absolutely agree with that. Berber, I don't know if I dare ask you that question, but honestly, it's burning on my lips.
And go for it. It's burning.
Do you remember when you were close to patients receiving chemotherapy in Germany? and that actually the big chief of the whole department asked you to support him in talking to some of the people, because actually it doesn't impact positively when they simply feel sorry for themselves about their sickness, and that they needed actually to have a different perspective on the disease and the treatment. Do you want to talk about this? You don't have to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Please.
Thank you for this question. So indeed, I was a co-patient. So I was in the same shoes or in the same situation. And of course, we all have different shoes, different background, different ways how we perceive this. And what you're referring to, Mark, I think this is indeed the oncologist. He asked me to not sit with everybody in the large room as usually I did, but be in a separate room, because there was one young lady and we became very good friends later. He had been 3 times to the chemotherapy and they couldn't do it because she was so panicked. They just couldn't do the treatment. She was completely panicked, and they asked me to help, and I was very surprised because back then I didn't work as a consultant, and mainly I was a patient myself. So I said, how can I help this lady? So just be here, sit here, maybe you can talk to her. That's what I did. So she arrived and I talked to her with genuine interest. And then after a while, she was like, oh, have we started the therapy? Oh, you have started the therapy. And then, yeah, okay, well, then we are in now. So she really, I talked to her. I don't know if I over-talked to her, but we had an exchange. It was fun. She enjoyed it, and she had completely, how do you say, blinded out or completely forgotten. And they were just around us, putting needles, starting things, and she hadn't realized. So this was her first chemo, and since then she could take it. And quite sometimes we took a day together to get chemo together and to continue our nice chat. So this indeed was certainly empathy. I was ready to help her in her situation, but not by pity and not bringing in my story. And indeed, I have realized this more than once during this time, that people came and approached me because they saw how I was dealing with this situation very openly, like I still do today. And I always asked myself, what am I grateful for? What do I learn? Why do I go through this? What do I take out of it? So gratefully, I had a rather positive approach. I didn't enjoy the medicaments and how I felt it, but I enjoyed this year because it was a lot of learning and self-discovering. And others fall into depression and so on and so on. So me also, I had lived that people didn't contact me anymore, but I wasn't angry or disappointed about it. And others had a very hard time to see that people they thought they were very close, they didn't show up anymore.
Yes.
And for myself, it was, I could understand this because it's not easy for everyone to be confronted in such a situation. It has nothing to do with being let down and so on, in my perspective. Yes. And this was different for other people. So yeah, it's what you say, Melissa. It's just you have a different background, different personality, different feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Melissa, please feel free to jump on anything that Berber is saying. Feel free to comment, ask anything you wish at any point of time. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, so first, I mean, you should be commended for doing that, because that was very selfless. And I mean, that's exactly what empathy is. But people don't always do that, because part of empathy is that when you are seeing another person in distress, you feel that distress. That's what spurs us to take action. The action is compassion. And without that distress, we probably wouldn't do it. So, I mean, big kudos to you for feeling that distress and walking through it anyway. And as you were talking about having friends who maybe didn't show up or see you much after that, my guess would be, I don't know because I don't know these people, but that maybe they felt that distress and couldn't handle it. And so they chose not to be there. My mom passed in 2007, and she passed from a lung disease. She needed a liver transplant and she just wasn't able to get it. But at the very end, she was very sick. And in between the drugs that they had her on and everything else, it was hard. And she had a sister that she really, really wanted to see, but this sister wouldn't come to see her. And what she said is she didn't want to remember her like that. But what that tells me is that the distress for the sister was so bad and so heavy that she couldn't show empathy for my mother. And I say that with no judgment at all whatsoever. She had to do what she had to do to be able to make herself healthy. But it's interesting to see the difference in how people react to this and what they do with it.
Yes. I talked to some of those disappearing friends later, and it was indeed exactly what they say. They couldn't take it. They felt so much for me.
Right.
They were so sympathetic that they couldn't stand it. And they also didn't know how to behave. What can I ask? What can't I? And I have met other people who don't want to talk about it. Not at all. They don't want to be asked. And for me, it was always ask everything you want and I tell you. And if I don't want to tell you, I will tell you. But this is also not the same for everybody. I know other patients who they so much stick to the wish to stick as much as they can to their lives. They certainly do not want to talk about anything they're going through. Yeah. So this is very, very different. And I had it the other way around also. I forbid my parents to come and see me. Every second week I had the chemo.
Yeah.
So in this week I was really, really not good, really not well. And I couldn't stand to see them suffering, to see in their eyes what they saw, and they almost couldn't take it, how sorry they were for their daughter.
Yeah.
So it was too difficult for me to see them. So I didn't want them to suffer, and I couldn't take it because I felt weak. So I told them, don't come that week, come every other week. Yeah.
Yes. Right. So they wouldn't see the big impact or the big effect that the medicine left on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is. I mean, that's why they train medical professionals, to try and stay away from emotional empathy, which is the I feel what you feel kind, and to lean into the cognitive empathy, which is I logically understand your situation or where you're at, but I don't actually feel anything. Because otherwise you run the risk of empathy fatigue and empathy burnout and compassion burnout. And those are things. And when we're dealing with people in the medical field that have to take this day after day after day, we already have a high enough incident of burnout in that field. We don't need to give them more.
Yes.
Yes. Melissa, what I would be interested in, you said if you react with sympathy or you feel sympathy, of course you bring your whole own background and emotions and all of this into it, which can have a negative effect. What actually is it precise? So I understand for teams, they can be insecure if you as a leader are so empathetic and oh my, what is happening and what is going on. It's difficult because you want your leader to guide you and to build on. But in general, what is it that comes out there in a negative way if you feel with sympathy?
The thing with sympathy is because you're approaching it through your own eyes, there's always going to be an element of judgment, not because anybody's bad, not because they're evil, just because as human beings, that's what we do. We compare things. And good, bad, or indifferent, when you're comparing things, one is going to be seen as better or worse or whatever than the other. There's that element of judgment there. And unfortunately, it's just part of what happens. And empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space ever. You cannot approach it with a comparative vision. You have to be able to approach it with really putting the other person first. That's why, with empathy, it's a very selfless act. You are trying to get into the bubble of the other person and understand them. Sympathy is actually a selfish act because you're putting yourself in first. So if you're going to relate to your teams that way, that's exactly how they're going to perceive it. Well, this leader is more concerned with themselves, with their feelings, with their situation, with their past than with ours. And as a team, you need that leader to be on, at very least, an equal bearing with them, or even sometimes to put the team first.
Yes.
So that's the real difference is understanding the difference between being selfless and being selfish. And that doesn't mean being a pushover. That doesn't mean giving in to everything. That doesn't mean, just like, yeah, sure, I want to be everybody's friends. It's not like that. It's more in understanding, the team as a whole and being able to see clearly. Because we want our leaders to see clearly, because they're the ones that have to have the long vision. They have to be able to see the strategy. So
Absolutely.
I actually was talking with one of these leaders that I was doing my research on, and he was talking about one of his upper level C-suite people, and at a healthcare facility. And this person was out in the parking lot, and there was a patient that came out, and this patient had lost a baby, and which is horrible. I can't imagine how bad that is. But the CEO was in the parking lot and took on this person's emotions and started crying, and they sat in the parking lot, and she really felt for this patient. But the problem is, as a leader, then she came in, and as she's trying to relate to her team, she's still in this emotional state. And she gave this one person all of this empathy and attention to the detriment of the team. Now, while I appreciate that she felt that for that patient, that wasn't the time or place for a leader to do this. I need my leaders to be able to lead. And that doesn't mean they should be cold. And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't feel for other people. But it does mean that this leadership is a responsibility. And if they're going to take on all of these emotions, they can't do their responsibility.
Absolutely. So as important as empathy is to put yourself in the shoes of others as a leader, to understand them, but you cannot become the other person, right? Yeah.
Right. And in fact, that's where you start getting into, one of the definitions of empathy is that you feel for the other person, but you never merge with the other person. You never lose that separation of self and other, is what they call it. And when you do start to lose that, that's where you start to get into mental health issues. So that, and that's a whole different thing, but just the point is there has to be that separation.
Yes. Okay, I got a question for both of you.
Yes.
But let's start with Biamil, and then we'll follow up with Melissa, if that's okay for you.
Yeah.
How do you stay an empathic leader when you yourself, you are personally feeling burnt out?
Yes.
Oh, well, I think if you feel burned out, there's a lot of things that you lose. And this is exactly why you are in a state of being burned out, which is a very, very serious state. And I think if you're really burned out, you're not able to lead at that moment. Because in not only in your job, but also in your personal relationships and so on, it's already been a while where things are difficult, where especially you cannot be empathic anymore because you're not even in the capacity to deal with yourself. And I'm sure Melissa can explain this much better than I do, but there's certain brain areas that like shut down. You do not have access anymore to this. To be an empathic self, you need to have your full and beautiful access to your beautiful brain, to both brain sides, to all areas of the brain, to be able to empathically feel with the person, but also stay with yourself, to make this difference between both, to see clear, to see a path, to anticipate. You need to be a healthy person, which you are not when you are burned out. And it takes months and months to come back. And there is some studies that say you even never fully come back, many people fully come back out of a burnout. And I think I would love to hear, Melissa, what you think. Therefore, also, it's very, very important to make the difference between being sympathetic and empathic. Because if you're pulled into the problem of everybody and you suffer and you feel like you yourself have lost the baby and so on, how can you survive this? How can you keep guidance?
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is a big thing right now, burnout. The first thing I would do is make sure that we separate, though, the difference between burnout and fatigue. I mean, actual burnout, Barbella is absolutely right. When you reach that point, it's like a match that is burnt out. There's nothing left. There's no fuel to allow the flame to burn. So that's a big problem. Fatigue, that's something that we do all deal with. And in the literature, in the research, it actually shows where if you're using empathy correctly, it actually helps combat burnout. Because if you're able to show this empathy for everybody else, you have to be able to show it for yourself first. Self-empathy, which I think is exactly what you were talking about, in that you have to be able to feel yourself before you can help anybody else. There's just no way around it, you know. And part of this, like I said, is being able to use empathy correctly. And that means using cognitive empathy and not emotional empathy. That means having the self-empathy to be able to say, okay, if I continue down this path, I'm going to end up with the problems that other leaders have, whether it's substance abuse or problems with family, complete burnout, whatever it is. So I have got to take care of myself first. And that doesn't mean that I'm not taking care of my team. That means I'm taking care of my team better by making sure I'm in the state to be able to take care of them. You know, but really trying to stay away from emotional empathy. And it's there for those of us that have it, and we have it. I mean, it's fast, it's instinctual, it's a lower brain function, it's biological, which is why a lot of animals, especially mammals and primates in particular, you know, also show empathy. There have been a lot of studies on rats that they show empathy, and they will react to the distress of another rat and try to get it out of that situation. The upper brain function is going to be cognitive empathy because it's slower, it's iterative, and it actually takes more energy. You kind of have to choose to use it. So, I mean, realizing that, you know, the human brain, even though it's 2% body weight, takes 20% of the metabolism, you know, of the calories of the fuel. So by adding more on top of that with cognitive empathy, it is more work, but it's work that's worth it if it's going to save you from that burnout in the end.
Yes.
Absolutely. Could you talk a bit more about both, because you're mentioning it several times, like the cognitive and emotional empathy?
So emotional empathy this is where one of the empathy myths in the world comes in. And in leadership, we see it a lot, because emotional empathy is, I feel what you feel. You know, you talk about people, yeah, I felt their pain, I felt their sadness, whatever it is. And the interesting part about that is that it isn't always negative. You can also feel their joy. You can also feel their excitement, but usually we tend to lean into the negative because we're humans and that's what we do. But there's this idea that that's all there is to empathy, and that's not true. There's also, I mean, there's a bunch of different kinds. There's like 43 different definitions according to research. But the other one that I talk about is cognitive empathy, which is I logically understand your situation, what it is to be in your shoes, how you feel, but I don't actually feel anything. So you're taking that feeling component away, which takes away a lot of the burnout and the hurt and the taking on all these negative emotions. And it's one that we forget. We tend to forget about this. So a dual root model of empathy was developed right around 2018 by Yu and Shu. They're the first ones that actually put a name to it. They were already looking at this, but they're the first ones that were like, yeah, there's two different kinds here that are working in tandem if it's working well. And so really, when you think about it in the world of empathy, we started talking about empathy as a thing around the 1900s. This is fairly new. And so we're still trying to get the rest of the world to catch up and say, hey, it's not all feelings. There's other ways to take the perspective of the other person.
Yes.
Some leaders also, in order to give perspective, to be strong, to know the answer, or at least the direction, have questions or hesitate to be very empathic. Yeah. And I personally think that empathy makes a really strong leader. It's a very crucial competency that you need.
Yes.
What are your guys' thoughts on this?
Go ahead. You haven't said much. I feel like I'm hogging the conversation.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah.
I would like, frankly, to be rather sitting asking you questions. If you like.
Okay, that's fine.
Melissa, once we will do a podcast, and then both of us, we will ask all the questions tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that idea.
Feel
That's a
free.
great
Feel
idea.
free.
No,
Feel free.
I agree. I mean, I think it takes more strength to really use empathy, because in order to use empathy effectively, the first thing you have to have is boundaries. And setting boundaries, and people can make boundaries all day long, but actually setting them and having consequences and sticking to them, that takes effort, and it takes time, and it takes thought. You have to actually set them. You have to focus on what you can control and what you can't, because you can't control other people. So your boundaries have to be there for your own health and safety. You have to be clear, concise, and communicate, meaning you have to be able to say, when you did this, it created that. And then you have to be able to set a consequence. If you do that, then I will do this. If you talk over me in meetings, then I will walk out. And they have to be consequences that you're willing to stick to. So you have to have the strength to have these boundaries in place if you're going to use empathy. That's another big myth, that empathy makes you weak, or that empathy makes you a pushover, or that kind of thing. And that's not true. Not having boundaries makes you a pushover, but empathy isn't doing it. It's not having your boundaries in place. So you have to have more strength to be able to do that. Plus, when you are using empathy and you are seeing the other perspective, you are seeing the effects that decisions have on other people. It's a greater responsibility. It's a lot easier to just go through life with no self-awareness and throw out dictates and, oh, this is what we're going to do, and not really care. When you actually care and you see the effects that things have on people, that responsibility weighs a lot heavier. So you do have to have the strength to do it. But again, I mean, it shows in the bottom line. It shows in employee attrition. It shows in outcomes. I mean, for patient outcomes and patient surveys, nothing else serves like empathy.
Yeah. Verbal, a question for you. How do you, especially in your consultancy, how do you set a firm boundary so that empathy doesn't turn into babysitting?
For my own empathy?
No. Leaders that you work with. Some leaders, when you tell them what empathy is and how they need to have leadership through empathy, they feel this is too much caring for employees, and some of them don't hesitate to use the word babysitting, saying, yeah, you're asking me to babysit colleagues.
I got
How do
you.
you set a firm boundary so that empathy doesn't turn into actual babysitting? It remains leadership through empathy.
Yeah. For me, when I talk to leaders or when I do my leadership retreats and seminars, it's more that I see these two behaviors, like I already mentioned it. There is leaders where I think they must be very strong and not too emotional and go straight forward, and they could not babysit their teams. Of course, we're not talking about babysitting if you show empathy to your team, but this is opening your heart and your mind to see the other person. It's not more and not less than this. And I encourage leaders, because I will repeat myself, I think this is a very, very strong component of leadership. If you are able to open your heart and your ears and your mind and your eyes to see where other people stand, what they think, what they say, where they go through. And this has nothing to do with babysitting, but being human and also giving direction. But if someone in your team is struggling, you can push harder and repeat the task, or you can listen and understand what is maybe hindering to just do it, to move forward. And that also needs empathy. I cannot say, yeah, but I know how to do it. For me, it's easy, so just do it quickly, do it perfect. We have a deadline. If you see someone struggling, well, I'm convinced that most of the people, they are of good faith. Yeah, it's not sabotage, but there is something that doesn't work. So if you want to move forward and you want to understand, you need empathy. So for me, it's more this side, to convince a few leaders that empathy is something very strong and very important.
Excellent. Melissa, I wanted to ask about quiet quitting.
Yes.
Is it a sign of lazy workforce or a sign of a leader with an empathy issue?
I think it's the second one. But you didn't expect me to say anything else, right? I mean, that's what you expect.
No, of course, but please explain why.
Yes. So the thing with quiet quitting, what happens is when people feel unseen, when they feel unheard, when they feel that they're not getting their very basic needs met. You know, we're talking about Maslow's pyramid, and on the very bottom is safety. You know, being safe at work, to be able to speak your mind, to be able to have your opinions, to be able to contribute. When they aren't getting those needs met, they withdraw. That's what we do as human beings. You know, we go
Yes.
into one of two things. Either we're going to fight the system, which in this case, you're not going to fight your boss, or you withdraw to protect yourself. And that's exactly
Yes.
what quiet quitting is. It's a culmination of resentment and not getting very basic needs met and saying, okay, if this is how it is, I'm going to give you the absolute minimum that I need so that I don't get fired. It's like Office Space for anybody who's seen that movie. You know, I do just enough not to get fired and not enough to draw attention to myself. And that's exactly what happened. And it's easy to say, oh, it's because the entire generation is lazy. But I mean, they said that about the baby boomers. They said they were all lazy because they were all, you know, drop out, tune in, whatever. They said Gen X was lazy because we were all slackers. That's me, you know. They said millennials were lazy because they spent too much time on their phones. So this
Yes.
excuse of laziness has been going on for over 100 years in the business world now. It's time, at least for the sake of keeping things interesting, let's find a different excuse.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. 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 Verbal, if you remember, one of the main discussions that we had in Europe during the COVID time is that working remotely somehow detaches you from the rest of the team, and that gradually you become really a lone wolf, and like you're not really part of the team anymore, to the point where it's difficult for you to go and work back with the same team because you just got used to the habit of working remotely.
Oh, you had asked Barbell, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Deborah, can you hear me?
Still asking for the, yes, I do. I'm still waiting for the question.
Yes. So the question is, can empathy help bridge the growing friction between remote workers and office-based management? Especially
Wonderful.
in this
I
context,
think,
especially in the
yes,
context of we don't see each other.
yes. I think this is a perfect example for empathy or the lack of empathy. So
Explain.
still today, sometimes you have kind of jealousy. People say, "Yeah, I'm working in production, or I'm in the shop on the point of sale. I cannot do homework. You do remote work. You sit at home. You can stay with your kids. You can do your laundry, and so on and so on. You don't have to
Yes.
be in the traffic." So yes, that's true. I cannot be on the production side if I stay at home. That's true. And I can do it if I'm an office worker, or for most of the office workers. So here, jealousy, because I compare one to one, this doesn't help anybody. So what do I need? I need empathy. I need to understand that you, Mark, you can do remote work. You
Yes.
can travel the work and you can do your work from everywhere. Me,
Yes.
if I give a seminar, I cannot, well, yes, I can do it remotely, but not a seminar in presence. I cannot do it remotely because it's at a certain location with people. And then I could say, oh, poor Bärbel, I have to travel, and poor Bärbel, I have to leave my home. No, I have other advantages that you might not have. My next seminar is in Florence, in Italy. How amazing is that? I'm thinking of going a day earlier or staying a day longer. I know Italy quite well, but I have never been to Florence. So what a chance. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then your question, how can we not become strangers, or when you come back to the team, to stay connected, because this is about human connection. You need exactly empathy for this. You
Yes.
need a mutual interest to the other person. And this is what you need to have empathy, cognitive empathy. Yes, if I'm not interested in you, I just want to get things done, well, then I write a memo and I will be angry if you don't do it. For all of these things, it's exactly the material we need, which is empathy.
Yes,
Right.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, you know, and the point you made about that, there's a judgment there. There's jealousy because people are comparing things, but they're not really seeing the situation through the other person's eyes. I mean, remote work can be very isolating. Sometimes it can be very lonely, you know.
Yes.
So whereas if you're in production, I mean, yeah, you have to be there, yeah, you have to show up, but you also get to be around other people. You get to have that community. So there's pros and cons to both of them. But the really beautiful thing about empathy is when it's working and it's working well, it goes in both directions. So the easiest way to be able to have empathy for another person is to be able to talk to them and relate your side so that they can understand, and then you can understand their side. And next thing you know, suddenly everybody's a little more humanized, and not this you know, person over here. It actually brings a personality and a face, and yeah, this is my job, and it's may not be quite as great as you think it is. Maybe I would like to be away from my kids all day. Maybe I don't want to do my laundry in the middle of the day, you know.
Yeah,
So
and maybe it's easier to stop working and move over to private life if you end a shift and not if you're all the time next to your office. This is also something. So I feel this lack of empathy or jealousy there, this goes a little bit into the same box like we discussed sympathy before, because there is judgment, there is comparison, and I function from my being to judge on what you do. And this in general doesn't help anybody,
yes,
especially it doesn't help relationships.
yes, yes, big time on that last one. Yes.
Yeah. Minister, for years and years, managers thought that leadership is about command and control.
Ooh, yeah.
Control the employees like you control machines and just give them orders like you push buttons on a machine.
Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't take two to say that this model has shown that it is actually a failure and it is a sign of very, very low emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
What would you like to say on this? What would you like to say to managers listening to you today who still work through command and control?
Command and control, excuse me. I mean, you're absolutely right. It doesn't work. It goes back to an earlier model. So if you think Industrial Revolution, turn of the century, Henry Ford, you know, that kind of thing, where the organization is thought of as a machine, right? It runs, it has cogs, it has wheels. If this gear doesn't work, you remove it and put another one in. And that's kind of where we get this idea that you can fix things by hammering on them. And it is a form of management. And let's be clear, management deals with systems. It deals with keeping systems clicking and running like a machine. That's what it does. And to a certain degree, and when done in the right way, that is needed. But that's not leadership. Leadership looks at the organization as an organism. This is something that can grow. This is something with different systems that work together, whether it's the brain and the nervous system and the gastric system and musculoskeletal and this kind of thing. And this organism can either grow and evolve, or it can go extinct if you are not leading it well. And we've seen this happen. It actually just happened with Del Monte, which is, you know, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but over here, this is a big fruit company. I mean, this was like from our childhood and stuff. And the thing is they did go extinct. They're like, that's it, we're done. So if you don't treat the organization as an organism or something that can either thrive and flourish or die, then that's what you're going to end up with. And that's where leadership is. And there's no room for command and control when you're dealing with an organism. I mean, if you have a cat and you try command and control, that doesn't work. Well, organisms do not respond well to command and control. They respond well to being able to flourish and thrive and evolve. And that's where leadership comes in.
Would you agree with that, Bourbon?
100%. I was just thinking, if you take our own organism, yeah, and then you give an order.
Yeah.
Let's Let's lose weight. Let's be more awake now. I need you in top form now.
Yeah.
It
Well, and
doesn't work like this. It works with leadership. Have a plan, have a strategy, and then help the organism work towards it.
Yeah. Well, and just like an organism, you're not going to fix it by cutting off an arm. You're not going to fix it by amputating a foot.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great stuff so far. Berbert, this is something that you've done in the past when you assumed the role of HR at some of the companies that I know that you've led. And sometimes you had to deliver bad news. Sometimes, unfortunately, you had to tell people, I'm sorry, but you're laid off. And you managed to do this without losing the trust of the survivors that were very, very happy to see you actually later on and still come to you and seek your advice and seek your leadership on things. How could you use empathy to deliver bad news? Like, for example, sorry, but you lost your job, and you do it so well without losing the trust of the survivors.
Not only of the survivors, also of those who had to leave. Yeah. So
Yes.
This is a situation where I think empathy becomes really a crucial but also a very difficult thing. Let me start with a colleague who did this job before I did it. He transformed where he once had to realize a social plan. There were many layoffs, many messages to be passed in few days that are catastrophic for people if they lose their job and so on. And he transformed into a robot. Yeah, he delivered the message. You could tell him whatever you wish. He just did one after the other for self-protection because he said, otherwise I don't get through it. So a big wall around him, so that certainly sympathy cannot happen, but also not empathy. I did it with empathy, and this is a huge effort and control because people react in all kinds of ways. They shout at you, they want to hit you, they cry, they beg, they do all kinds of things. And that's not easy to take, especially if you have to deliver the message like many times for many people, in cases where you know them for a long time and you know their conditions and they just bought a house and all of these kind of things. So, and there I think what you so beautifully explained, Melissa, is cognitive empathy. It's very important also that you do not slide to the empathic empathy, to the emotional empathy. But it's really an effort to stay human, to put yourself in the shoes of the others, but also to stay firm and just deliver the message. Because in that situation, you cannot do anything for the person. You can just deliver the message in a human way, right? You cannot start negotiating. Normally, there's no room for it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a tough one. I think empathy is important, but it's really not easy to deliver in those moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Melissa, feel free, please, to answer the question, and afterwards, please tell me about George Clooney in Up in the Air.
Yeah. So I would actually agree that, yeah, you almost need more empathy in those situations.
Yes.
Because you're about to you're the messenger, but you are about to impact a lot of people's lives. And I think by taking their perspective and understanding, yeah, it's going to be emotional. There's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. You're actually able to get ahead of some of this and answer the questions that they're going to have. You know, you have this much time. You're going to keep your benefits for this long. You know, we don't have another position, but maybe they have a resource. We can help you with your resume. Maybe there's, you know, connections that can be made. Who knows? Because I mean, it's part of business. A business has to run. If the organism, sometimes you do have to amputate a part that is sick enough that it's going to sicken the rest of the organism. And unfortunately, that is part of it. But being ahead of it and being as kind as possible. And by kind, I mean really looking towards the best outcomes of everybody. and foreseeing some of what's going to come up out of this. I think with that empathy, having the perspective of what's about to happen by seeing it through other people's eyes really helps in these kind of situations. You know, as opposed to like we hear about how Meta was like, yeah, they sent out 40,000 emails firing all of these people. Well, I mean, it doesn't get much more inhumane than that at all. You know, they didn't think about their people at all. Whereas approaching it with empathy and kindness and doing the best that you can right up to the end, I think that speaks hugely for the organization. Because, yeah, you had to let them go, but you did it in the kindest possible ways, which creates goodwill in and out of the organization. Yeah, okay, they had to let these people go, but they did it in the best possible way. They didn't just send out a text at 2 a.m. and say, don't come in tomorrow.
Yes.
You know? So I wasn't sure what the second question was, Mark. What's the second question you had for me?
So this was actually about how we use empathy to deliver bad news without losing the trust of the survivor. The question that, frankly, I was having in mind for you is the following. If empathy is a muscle, what is the best 5-minute daily workout for a busy manager?
Learning self-empathy. Figuring out empathy for yourself first, because you cannot have it for anybody else if you do not have it for yourself. And there's 4 steps to this. If you want to develop self-empathy, the first is self-observation. And that means seeing the situation, but trying to see it without judgment. Do not add emotions to it. That's what I call being critical, not caring. So you're approaching this like a computer. You're taking in data, you're looking at patterns, you're looking at overall information, but you're not assigning emotion. Because a computer does not assign emotion when you go red in your checkbook. It doesn't care. It's just looking at numbers. So self-observation. Second is self-reflection. And that means turning the lens inward and understanding what this observation means. Because 3 people will look at the same situation and see 3 different things. Well, Bob came into the meeting and I yelled at him. But did that mean something had happened with Bob earlier? Does that mean I had a fight with my partner this morning and I was angry? Does that mean that I saw a report come across my desk and I just lost it? Reflect on it. What caused this action? What was going on with me that this happened? The third is self-awareness, which now you turn the lens outward and you see what effect your actions have on the rest of the world. Well, when I yelled at Bob in this meeting, everybody shut down. Any collaboration is gone. Everybody's hiding and walking on eggshells. And now Bob, I don't know what he's doing because I haven't seen him since. So what is the effect that what you did had on the world? Step 4 is self-compassion, because compassion is the action to empathy. So what is the action you need to take now? You know, do you have to say, okay, yeah, I got in a fight with my husband this morning, and so I took it out on Bob. Or Bob challenged me in a meeting last week, so I've been harboring that resentment since then, and I took it out on him. You know, okay, yeah, I made that mistake. Yeah, I should maybe go apologize to Bob. And I'm going to have to get my team together and say, you know, I need you to have empathy for me because, yeah, I did something that maybe wasn't very effective, but we can get this back on track, and I'm taking full responsibility. So now let's figure this out and get things back together. So if you can start with self-empathy, and once you get good at it, you can click off those 4 steps in 5 minutes or less. Then you can start using empathy for others because it's the same 4 steps. So that's, if people could do one thing today, that would be what I would recommend.
Okay. Last question, but please give me short answers because we're really very short on time. I'll start with Burberry. How do you help a team recover their spark after a period of intense post-pandemic stress as we all went through in 2021 after COVID-19?
I take time with the team, not only for, but with the team to reconnect, to understand what's going on, to change minds, to experience things. We cannot, after such a break or such a massive event, just go and do like business as normal like we did before.
Yeah.
Melissa?
I absolutely agree, because like something major like that, it doesn't just upset the business, it upsets lives. things were happening in private life. And like in healthcare, all of a sudden, all of these different mandates and dictates were coming down from different agencies. So you have to have the perspective of your people and understand that this was a life-changing event. We're not just going to pick up where we left off.
Ladies, you were absolutely amazing, both of you. I'm really so grateful to have had you today for this very short podcast, and I look forward to the possibility of having you both again in the future. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much.
This was
Thank
fantastic.
you, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Melissa.
you.
It was great.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Belby. Thank
Thank you
you.
both.
Bye now. Bye.